Good morning, everybody, or indeed good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you today about e-safety, which is 3.4 and 3.5 on our safeguarding units. Okay, so you will have a PowerPoint that I've sent you. And again, I have numbered the slides, although they haven't come out very well on my copy, so hopefully yours are a bit better. So slide number 2. Benefits and disadvantages of well, not of e-safety, but of generally online use. I don't think anybody even tries to cross the road without referring to some website these days. I mean, it makes so many things so easy. I mean, look at us now with the coronavirus pandemic and how, you know, the children are all working online. I'm posting things on YouTube. People are, you know, are managing to shift office-based work into, you know, meetings online. You know, things will really change in lots of very positive ways in terms of not driving everywhere. I'm never going to drive to another meeting at college again. Now I can do it in my study. There's lots of real benefits for educating learners, you know, on the internet. We all know that, you know, students learn at different speeds, and, you know, if you have an opportunity where you can rewatch things over and over again, that can be really helpful. For some visual learners, you know, they might be struggling with a lesson, and you can find things on YouTube. You can find other ways of explaining things. You know, it's an incredible resource, amazing. There's huge benefits in terms of getting people together, some of the educational games that are available, and, you know, it can be an amazing boon for keeping in touch with people, Skyping, face-to-face stuff, you know, gathering information and research. I mean, I remember, you know, as a student having to go to the library to do all my research, going to a reference library, having to make an appointment, and then photocopying things out of books. You know, it was very labour intensive, and now, you know, we can just tap away on the keyboard, and, you know, the world is at our fingertips. It's amazing. Obviously, there are some disadvantages. And I think as mature people, you know, we limit our time because actually we've got other things we need to be doing, so we don't spend a huge amount of time perhaps just surfing about on the internet. For some children, you know, they will be the sort of children that get really caught up in some of the games. And the way that we are living currently at the moment, you know, people are very isolated. You can imagine some people becoming very keen on their virtual lives that they have, where they're a prince warrior in a magical kingdom, and they're blasting and being powerful and in control, when actually they're stuck in their bedroom and no one's allowed out the house. You can, you know, some of these games can be very addictive in the best of times. The endorphins that are released with the excitement of the games, you know, those feelings, they can be very addictive. And, you know, it's quite difficult to encourage your children to read their textbooks, I don't know, in spectacles, when they could be blasting Martians with a massive submachine gun in their virtual world. So it can be difficult. There's lots of studies about how the online experience can be damaging for children. And the government keeps, you know, giving revised guidelines about how much time they should spend on screen. I mean, currently they say it should be a maximum of 2 hours, but obviously that was before school went online and we're all sitting on our bottoms for long periods of time. The instant gratification can be a problem, that feeling of instant sunshine. There's a concern that, you know, children that spend a lot of time just very shallow research, looking for things, they don't really get to that deeper level of understanding where you can really hold information. There's lots of benefits, there's lots of disadvantages. Most people, I think, would be really lost without it. Let's move on to slide 3. Here we've got some of the things that cause a lot of concern. for young people being online. So we've got obviously the availability of pornographic material. We have got online gambling, and it's supposed to be age related, but I don't think it's checked very well. You know, you can hear of kids getting themselves really caught up in all sorts of dangerous cycles. We've got the worries of extremism and being radicalized, whether that's by religious groups, political groups. The internet gives a way of people who are finding something to join, somewhere where they feel safe. There's lots of chat rooms. We've got the self-harming chat room here. There will be anorexic chat rooms, not for people who are trying not to be anorexic or not self-harming, but people who are getting encouragement and being told how to do it so people don't notice. I mean, similarly, you've got chat rooms for people who want to commit suicide, and there's a chat room for everything. So you have to be really, really mindful, and lots of the filters that families put on their home computers can be quite frustrating. I tried to find some swimming from a swimming costume recently, and my filter wouldn't let me because it was, you know, risky. So what often happens is, you put your filter on, you want to protect your children, and then you take your filter off because you can't actually see when the cathedral coffee shop is open because it's a religious building and they might become radicalized. So it's challenging. It's important to know what your kids are up to online and at home. When you're at school, you can feel fairly confident that you have an IT manager or an e-safety manager who is going to have the filters locked down, and often schools and colleges will monitor very carefully where kids are. I think I've spoken to you about some of the software that we have at college. When people type in keywords which are of a concern, so maybe it's like bomb making or suicide things, anything like that, there will be a report sent to the designated safeguarding lead, saying the name of the student and when and where, and then if they're concerned, they can speak to that student. So that's something that happens quite regularly, where you don't have a full filter for, obviously in colleges you've got 16 to adults using things, so it's tricky. Moving on to slide 4, we have social networking. So again, this can be real benefits and real disadvantages. It keeps families together. The problems we have in secondary school can be the whole cyberbullying thing. Any kind of bullying that happens online is called cyberbullying. It's really difficult because, if you probably remember from your own school days, if you have a bad experience at school, you go home, you shut the front door, you're at home, calm, nice, it's good, it's a proper break. With cyberbullying, with kids having phones and laptops and tablets, it can be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It can be really, really dangerous and destructive. If you have a look at slide 5, I've got a few terms here, but there'll be a accompanying document that you'll be able to see lots of internet terms, which are quite useful to know what people are talking about. But I want to talk to you about slide 6, which is Lucy and Felix Alexander, and you might be aware of this mother and son. So Felix he started a secondary school where he just didn't really fit in. Lots of the other kids there were all playing Call of Duty, which is a 18 age game, blasting soldier sniper type thing. And he was different. He wasn't playing the game. I mean, sometimes, children just pick on a target because it makes them feel that that target's not going to be them. No one really stood up for him. He was relentlessly bullied through his school by people he didn't know. People would just stalk him online. anything he put up, people would be really awful. It really eroded his confidence. His mum, talks about seeing this lovely, bright, lovely lad turning into somebody with no self-esteem, who was sort of scared of his own shadow. He got to the end of his secondary school and they decided that he wasn't going to go to the sixth form college where his friends, well, the people that from his school were going to be going. He was going to go somewhere else. But it followed him. Sometimes people become targets, and it follows them around. And so even then, with a fresh start, and there were some nice kids there and there were some really nice students, the damage had really been done to his confidence. And in April 2016 he committed suicide, and it was a terrible, obviously, a terrible thing. But what his mother did, she had felt so powerless when Felix was being so bullied, because lots of people would say, well, just take them away from the internet, don't let them have a phone, don't let them go on social media. But for young people who, we've talked about when we were thinking about like child development, at that age, as a young person, you really are propelled towards people. You feel like your future depends on your peers accepting you, and taking away all of that stuff, not giving people an opportunity to know what's going on or to make any kind of connections, can be really damaging too. It's such a difficult balance, this whole social networking thing. Lucy Alexander really wanted to do something to address what was happening, because there's children being bullied to the point where they commit suicide is sadly not a completely unique experience. It does happen. So what she decided to do is that she wrote a letter to be shared with secondary schools. There's a full copy of it. You can see it on the internet. And I've put on slide 7 a copy of just some highlights of it. She says things like how unkindness is dismissed by young people as just a bit of banter. Because when you don't see the person that you are abusing, it's sort of like it doesn't matter. And you can imagine, people sort of in small groups at night time, sending messages. She could refer to them as keyboard warriors. They feel so brave because they don't actually see the person they're talking to. They would probably never dream of speaking to Felix in the way that they were able to type to him. It gives them that kind of feeling of being anonymous. It's a really powerful letter, so I would really recommend that you read it. She shared this letter. It was published in lots of papers. She's one of the people that goes to schools and talks about the effects of cyberbullying on people's lives, on their whole lives as well. It's very difficult, if you've had a period where you felt like you were being so demonized and so ground down. It's very difficult to recover your self-esteem and your confidence from that. She also founded a charity called Place to Be, which helps people who are being bullied. One of the things that Lucy Alexander really wanted to share is the idea that lots of the people that bullied her son were not bad people. They weren't naturally mean. They were just thoughtless. It was the act of lots of thoughtless people, and it was the act of lots of other people who were aware of what was happening and didn't stand up to it, didn't call it out. So she really wanted people to really think about what they were doing online and what their friends were doing online, because peer pressure is really useful with this age group. And if you feel that the things that you're doing are not accepted by the people around you, that has a really powerful controlling effect on what you do. I've put a link. Well, you won't be able to see it on your PowerPoint copy, but there's a YouTube address, a How to Beat Cyberbullies short film. That's your next slide. That's a well-cast one. It's only 5 minutes, and it's quite useful. Again, it's a useful thing to share with students. Schools obviously do lots of work in IT lessons, in PSHE lessons, in tutor time and assemblies to make children really aware of what their responsibilities are with e-safety. Before they start at secondary school, they have to sign a a policy document saying they understand that they can't share passwords, they can't indulge in in practices which are going to result in damage for other people. It's really drummed into them, and I think that having people like Lucy Alexander talking at schools and the work that schools do, it does become clear. Some children need to be told quite a few times. So let's have a look at slide 9. What can settings do to keep children safe? So as I've said, they talk to children about their own responsibilities for how they behave online, making sure that all the school computers have appropriate filters. That's really important. Educating children about giving out the dangers of personal details, putting photos online, keeping themselves safe. That's something that they do a lot, particularly in Year 7. Pretty much all the first IT lessons that they have as part of the national curriculum currently is they try and find out information about sort of famous people. How well is their information hidden? Can you work out where they live? And they look at some really interesting case studies about how vulnerable people can be. Quite useful stuff. They will always have an e-safety policy in school, have to have one of those, and there'll also be an e-safety manager or a coordinator too. Moving on to slide 10, lots of schools also really try and include the families in this process. So quite often you will have e-safety evenings where parents are invited into the school to find out about what's going on, what the dangers are. The whole technology world changes all of the time, and keeping up with new issues, new problems, new apps. It's really helpful to keep parents in the loop. Lots of parents will not really want to get involved, or they won't really be sure what their kids are doing, and you really need to encourage them that actually they've got to be in the know, they've got to be knowledgeable and have some control. Colleges get less involved in that kind of thing, but they will always provide parents and carers with information. They don't generally, well, in my experience, invite parents and carers in, but that they will have information on their website and people that you can talk to. So slide 11, teaching and support staff. So there are some very specific responsibilities for teaching and support staff, not surprisingly, around this area. And when you start in place, there is a booklet that you have to read through and you have to sign to say that you've understood. And it basically will include things like the school's policy and procedures around e-safety. There will be a staff acceptable use policy, an AUP, which you have to understand and be able to comply with. You have to report any suspected misuse or any problems around filters, that kind of thing, to the e-safety manager or to the IT manager straight away. Sometimes, depending on the content, you might also involve the DSL. You need to be very careful with how you use school technology yourself, not sending students anything on your own emails. You only ever using your school email, not using social networking, or using it very, very carefully. I mean, I've never had a Facebook account. I know too many people who've had a horrible time with students trying to spend a lot of time trying to get into their Facebook account. I don't know why they want to look at you, in your bikini on holiday, but they do seem to. They'll spend a few hours doing that. So it's a really good idea to give yourself a completely false identity if you're working in school and you want to have Facebook. You have to also ensure that e-safety is embedded in the lessons and the activities that you're involved in. Always find a way of talking about situations that could and couldn't happen when it crops up. It's really important also that students understand their e-safety policy, so you might also have to keep a bit of an eye on that, see what they're doing, making sure that they know what the rules are. And the last slide, a few tips for parents. ban devices from bedrooms before they have them. See, I wish someone had told me about that one. Limit screen time and stick to it. So that's very age appropriate. And there are some apps that you can use which will actually cut out. So children will know that they've got like 2 hours, and when their 2 hours are over, that's that. So there are some, and again, it changes all the time with how to go about setting those things. But it's, you know, there are things you can do to have control. Set filters. And, you know, don't be scared of technology. I know that lots of parents moan about their children playing games online and all the rest of it. But some good advice somebody gave me was, you know, play games online with your children and see what it's actually all about. Actually, it's pretty good. Don't get addicted. When you do things with your children that they don't imagine that you're going to do, and you enjoy it, and you can sort of, it's very bonding. And as they get older, to have a couple of rounds of doing a little bit of sniping with my older children, you know, it's quite good fun. And you know, it sort of helps. It helps keep the connection. So something to bear in mind. Anyway, there we go. That is eSafety. So that is, what is that one? 3.4 and 3.5. I will load the next one in a minute. So hope you enjoyed it.